You're listening to Preston and Steve on 93.3 WMMR. MMR rocks now.
I stumbled across this on the web. It's a story about who did this come from? They found this in the White House in the Nixon administration. You know, when they were doing the landing on the moon,
which was it was a 50-50 proposition at that time whether they were going to make it and do it, and it would come off as planned.
And in fact, it's the 40th anniversary of the first moon landing.
First pig on the moon.
Wow.
It just fired by itself.
I love it when that happens.
Pig on the moon.
Yes. We want to make sure first they went from dogs to monkeys and then, of course, a pig.
Yes.
If we can put something porcine on the moon, that'd be great.
But this story says attention is set to focus on a little-known speech drafted in case of a much different outcome that historic day. While Neil Armstrong's immortal lines, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," had entered history, 233 other words written for a tragedy that everyone hoped would never happen were consigned to an archive and forgotten until now.
This is amazing because you would imagine, as the president, they would have prepared him for the possibility, because, I mean, at that point, we're going to another planet. We're going to our own moon, and if you've seen Apollo 13, you know what the technology was like.
Yeah.
They accelerated the space program. Of course, the president should have been prepared for a tragedy. A tragedy.
And that's what this is. It was contained in a typed memo from President Richard Nixon's speechwriter, Bill Safire, to White House Chief of Staff Harry Halderman, and dated July 18th, 1969, 2 days before the landing was due.
My fellow Americans, they're all dead! They're all dead! We defied the Lord God. Man was not meant to fly. What were we doing?
It's a little dramatic.
In a time of crisis, you turn to the president.
Right. But it was...
We effed up so bad. So bad. Oh, what were we thinking?
The title of the speech is "In the Event of Moon Disaster."
Yeah.
The stark message brings home just how dangerous the mission
Even though it was our fondest hopes that we would find moon maidens up there, as depicted in comic books since time immemorial, a tragedy has befallen our nation. It didn't work! So now who's laughing at my idea of a huge ladder? It doesn't look so stupid now, does it?
It says if Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin had been stranded on the moon, unable to return to Michael Collins' orbiting Apollo 11 command ship, Nixon would have called their widows and then addressed a horror-struck nation.
Can you imagine the preparation that goes into that? Now, it was prepared for their death. Were there various iterations of this speech?
You know what?
For the death, for them being stranded? Because I assume if they were stranded, I know that NASA must have had a backup plan to try to rescue it. I mean, we would assume, right?
Not that I know of, Steve. I mean,
you
the
would have
rumor
put
was
men on the moon. We would have assumed that there was some contingency plan. Maybe not,
but
though.
But at that time, Steve, with Kennedy, initially pushing the
I may not made out of money.
The space program forward. That there's no way that I think they could have afforded to have backup plans ready to go to fly another ship up there.
If you watch that Discovery series, when man left the Earth, I think it was called. When Kennedy basically said, by the end of the decade, he set the bar so incredibly high, but the nation rose to it. But really, it was on a wing and a prayer that happened.
And then Preston, I talked to you one weekend. You're like, I'm watching this thing on. What was that on Discovery?
It was called Moon Machines.
Oh, dude,
it was awesome.
Great series.
It took just small portions of each part of the lunar program and it followed it in detail. One was all about just strictly the navigation system. One was all about just propulsion. Another one was just about the moon rover, and it would break it down. Or one was just about the command module,
or the LEM,
and would take every little bit of information and tell you how it started from ground up. Kathy, I almost called you to tell you that it was on.
My
my
father-in-law worked at Grumman on Long Island, which is one of the facilities that built the lunar landing vehicle.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you want to hear some of the speech?
I mean,
do you want to go ahead?
Well, this is the moon landing transmission, right?
Okay, yeah. Do you want to hear that? This was here.
I'm going to step off the limb. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Columbia, this is Houston, AOS, over.
So amazing.
Houston, Columbia, Gate, over. Roger, the EVA is progressing beautifully. They're setting up the flag now. I guess you're about the only person around that doesn't have TV coverage of the scene. That's all right, I don't mind a bit. They've got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes on the lunar surface.
My fellow Americans, when we entered into this voyage years ago, little did we suspect that the planet would be populated by space gorillas.
That was, when
Sadly, that is the case. Whereas our brave astronauts left the vehicle, they were set upon by large furry beasts. Heretofore unseen by our telescopes.
I was going to say they couldn't see. They had telescopes,
Well,
man.
the bitch of it is they're gray.
So
They blend right in. Would never have seen them.
They're gray. How could they have possibly seen those?
Go figure. The one color we weren't counting on.
All right. Well, anyway. Oh, God. On a more serious note.
Neil was taken below ground to meet their leader. Who I understand goes by the name Bongo.
Oh, God. I coughed something up.
You got Nick farting, you throwing up. Anybody else?
All right.
Okay.
That's wild, man. Do you have no interest in this, Kathy? Because I'm just so fascinated by
I am
this.
too. I mean,
because it's standard procedure right now for any notable personality or any politician of any at least moderate level. There is a biography, an obituary prepared for them so that the news can roll immediately with it. It stands to reason the president would have had that as well.
Do you think they have an obituary for any of us in the?
I think that's just wishful thinking.
What, you think Bill has obituaries for all of us?
well, I'm going to read to you what would have been said had there been some kind of an accident on the moon. It says,
Tonight we lost Marcus in the dark.
Yeah.
His famous catchphrase,
oh my God. All right, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, this is what Nixon would have said.
Do you want some dramatic music?
No. I'll just read it straight up.
Sad.
It says, "Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace.
Oh my God!
These brave men know there is no hope for their recovery, but they also know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice." Okay, so Steve, this was written in the incident that they may have been stranded
on the moon.
On the moon, so there was no they had nothing to bring them back.
All right, this is a little interesting.
Really?
Yes. Thank you that the thousands and thousands of man hours and lives lost has managed to slightly pique Kathy's interest.
Yeah. Who got voted off of Dancing with the Stars last night?
The football guy.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, and Steve, before I continue
as
on,
the first furry emissary made his way from beyond a rock, all gray looking with the fangs, must have been scary. And sadly, our astronauts in their outfits could not have resembled more their favorite food of the poontang berry.
we found out what their favorite food was.
Yeah.
Poontang berry. Oh dear God. Steve, has it ever been confirmed 100% that they do in fact give astronauts some sort of a pill that they can kill themselves should they find themselves in that situation?
I've heard it.
They've never
I would think
verified
that would be such a negative thing to give to them. You know, I don't know.
I would want to have something like that. If you knew that you were going to starve to death.
To starve or die of air deprivation, oxygen deprivation, perhaps.
Okay, so that...
I wonder if they had a firearm. If they had a firearm aboard.
I would just
In
take
case
my
there was
helmet off.
some kind of a mutiny or
something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if you go up there and even though they're prepared, they do the isolation things with them. I mean, obviously you don't discharge a weapon in a highly pressurized thing, but some way to subdue.
All right, this
Yeah,
is
they
where,
did
this
in
is where
Armageddon.
this is where you lose me, and I have no interest.
This you don't.
Yeah.
Then just leave. You're bringing us down.
No, I mean, really, they're going to give them firearms? Do they? Or
Let me
do
ask
they-
you.
they
What,
should?
here,
Hold on,
let
don't
me lay out
answer
the scenario. What if you're on the moon? You're Neil Armstrong. You're with Buzz Aldrin. Buzz starts flipping out. You're looking up in the sky, and there's the planet you live on. How do you take control of the situation?
So you think he should shoot him?
No, I'm saying there must have been some way to wouldn't you imagine?
Okay, well, that's my question. So did they have firearms, or you're just assuming they might have?
If you heard what I said, I was asking.
Yeah, we don't know. I'm saying there are rumors that they would give Kathy them pills that they had in case there was some kind of situation where they were in. Never going to be able to come back, or they had been, their spacecraft had skipped off the atmosphere and headed out into deep space.
I can understand that.
That there was no chance that they would ever come back, that they might want to end it quickly.
So they don't have to suffer. I can understand that.
I think I would opt for the pill rather than die a slow
starvation
death.
or whatever it may be. Well, anyway, I'll continue on with how the speech would have been. It says, these brave men know that there is no hope for their recovery, but they also know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice. These two men are laying down their lives in mankind's most noble goal, the search for truth and understanding. They will be mourned by their families and friends. They will be mourned by their nation. They will be mourned by the people of the world. They will be mourned by a Mother Earth that dared send two of her sons into the unknown.
As President of the United States, I now declare war on the space gorilla population. Again, heretofore unknown. On the moon.
In their exploration, they stirred the people of the world to feel as one. In their sacrifice, they bind more tightly the brotherhood of man. And then the president would have added, in ancient days, men looked...
And now I'd like to show you how I make a salad.
Just like that.
Yeah, just change because redirect.
Lighten it up a little bit at the end,
he said...
I like to chop up apples.
I find this stuff fascinating.
I do too. He would have said, in ancient days, men looked at the stars and saw their heroes in the constellations. In modern times, we do much the same, but our heroes are epic men of flesh and blood. Others will follow and surely find their way home. Man's search will not be denied, but these men were the first, and they will remain the foremost in our hearts.
I mean, they must have had one of these for every mission, or at least for the more prominent missions. Maybe when John Glenn went up.
Sure, I would think so. Whenever the eyes of the world were
were focused,
something. And then
like there were ones. I mean,
a couple astronauts died. We now resume Laverne and Shirley.
Well, I didn't know it was on way back when.
No,
anyway,
first show that came.
This would have been. He also would have quoted a First World War poem called "The Soldier." His concluding lines were to be, for every human being who looks up at the moon in the nights to come will know that there is some corner of another world that is forever mankind. And then once the speech had been delivered, Mission Control would have closed communications.
Whoa.
And a clergyman would have conducted a burial service like the one used at sea.
Because let's say it didn't launch. You had, I think it was Mike Collins was the astronaut orbiting the planet. What would be his situation? Because I believe, wouldn't they be? They would need to relink for him to come back to Earth.
I don't.
Did he have enough fuel?
No, I don't think they would have had to have linked up with him, because once they come up and they connect the LEM on, then the guys from the LEM come into the command module, and then they jettison the LEM, and then they take the command module back home. So, anyhow, once the speech would have been delivered, they would have cut off communications. It would have had service. The memo had laid dormant for decades in Nixon's private papers in America's National Archives. Laid aside once the astronauts...
I was cleaning out the rubbish.
Laid aside once the astronauts had completed their mission. So that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
But you know that they have that stuff in a drawer ready to go when events are going to take place.
Amazing.
Yeah, so anyhow. Oh, this is the Star Wars dramatic music.
Yeah.
All right, well, anyway.
We're sending TIE fighters to take on that space gorilla population. Again, they're gray, we didn't know.
Preston and Steve rock on 93.3 WMMR.